At this year's UK Metals Expo, we've been trying to concentrate on some of the key policy asks for the steel industry in the UK, and particularly Tata Steel. We've talked about scrap, we've talked about tariffs and trade, we've talked about CBAM. But one of the other things we haven't yet talked about in any level of detail is a public procurement opportunity. So the UK government is one of the largest specifiers of steel in the UK for building infrastructure, hospitals, schools and so forth. They have it within their gift to specify where the steel in those projects comes from. Delighted to be joined by Kamal Rajput, friend of the pod. Cam, we've had you on many times before. Lovely to see you at Metals Expo. I know you've been as busy as we have. Where are we at with public procurement with the UK government?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. So it's a mixed bag, but we are making progress. The government acknowledge, and they release it on a regular basis, some compliance data, which effectively shows that UK steel producers have a relatively small market share, around about 30%. So there's a need to do more. But we've been lobbying really hard for the past couple of years, and specifically in the past 3 to 4 months, we've seen what I would call not just cultural change, we've seen tangible change. So at the start of September, the UK government released something called a policy procurement note, PPN 22, which had 2 detailed stipulations. The first one was that all contractors within their value chain had to consult something called the UK Steel Digital Catalogue. That is a digital document, it's a web tool, which effectively was born out from the Steel Task Force back in 2021, which shows the capability of steel producers.
So no excuse.
Absolutely, yeah.
Don't know about.
And the web link, or the web platform, is detailed within the PPN, and that has to be consulted, and that's a mandate. And that's the full value chain. The other thing that they've done is, which doesn't go far enough still, but there has been progress, is for organising committees or purchasers to consider whether there is an opportunity for steel producers or that particular product to be purchased under a national security exemption. So particularly when referencing the defence sector, that's something quite important. Now, does it go all the way? No. Do we need to do more? Yes. But what we have seen is a movement, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I can't help thinking, if I was a member of the public and I was to support British industry and we are outside the European Union, why the government doesn't say, for every public project, unless you can't get it in the UK, you've got to buy it from a UK producer. Why can't they do that?
So they can do that. Their biggest fear at the moment is what that would mean from a WTO perspective, that's World Trade Organization. And also, they've got a big concern as to what our colleagues or ex-colleagues within the EU think about that. So they're having to be very balanced in their view, but I refer back to cultural change. If we were to have had this conversation with government over a year ago, I think we would still be where we are right now. And over a year later, we are seeing some movement towards where we are. And I think the 2 biggest drivers for that, or the one big driver, but the 2 biggest words for that, is economic growth.
Yeah, and it's big for the government in terms of economic growth. Good to hear that they are insisting that their Tier 1 contracts, or you said through the supply chain, have to refer to the product catalogue. I know it's a relatively new concept. Do we have any sense of that resulting in any change in terms of UK steel for UK projects?
Yes, I was actually on a call recently with National Highways and the entire National Highway steel community, from their main contractors to their fabricators, and they stated formally and publicly that this is now part of their contract.
Wow.
So does it go far enough? Like I said earlier, no, it doesn't. So we need to do more, but it's about that step change in mindset, culture, and actual documentation.
Yeah, and it's difficult because I know we're asking a lot of the government in terms of lots of areas. But if I was in the government and I said to you, what do you want us to do next in terms of public procurement? What are those next sort of steps?
Really clear for us, and we've been very clear with government what we want. So through projects such as through NSIP, which is the National Strategic Infrastructure Projects, the large projects in the UK, and through the contracts for difference, or the CFD process, for offshore projects, onshore wind projects and solar projects. We want there to be a 30% mandate of local content for steel within those projects. Yeah, wow. So that is a policy ask that we've made, it's a policy ask we're pushing for, and obviously with the change in parliamentarians over the past week or so, we're going to continue to re-energise our efforts to engage with those stakeholders to ensure that that's a reality.
Yeah, and what sort of, maybe an unfair question getting you on hoof, but what sort of volumes are we talking about for the UK steel industry in terms of that opportunity in public procurement projects?
So government are quite clear. They issue a government pipeline on an annual basis, and some of that is within the private sector, some of that's in the public sector, but that pipeline annually shows anywhere between 7 to 8 to 9 million tonnes per year. So it's huge volumes, and those are over, well, it's an annual project, but then they give us a 10-year visibility as well. Yeah. So there's huge volumes. We need to do more, they need to do more, and there's lots of things missing as well. So we've got to work together with government and the private sector to support the steel value chain.
Yeah, and of course, people should be clear that, at Tata Steel UK, we supply a number of sectors, not all of which fall into this. So automotive doesn't fall into this, packaging doesn't fall into this. It's mostly construction, is that fair?
That is very, very fair. The one sector that we know is growing, and we've had a number of discussions, Tim, on the podcast about renewables, some of that is still not included within these numbers. Okay. So the number that I shared with you is the totality. So we've got to do more with all the across the value chain to ensure we can capitalise on it. Yeah,
listen, Cam, thanks very much for taking time out to talk to us as ever. We will see you definitely before next year's UK Metals Expo, but won't it be interesting to come back in 12 months' time and say what difference has it made to our volumes and to our profitability of UK steel in that time?
Absolutely. Thanks,
Super.
Tim.
Good to see you, Cam. Look after yourself. Thank you.